They gamble with your money. They rig the system in their favor. They profit while you pay the price. From the genesis of greed in early banks, through 20th century nightmares of depression and scandal, to the shadow deals and 21st century crises that plague us today, we expose the dark truth. Uncover the conspiracies, the hidden fees, the unclaimed fortunes. For centuries, they've operated in the shadows, pulling the strings of the global economy. Are banks the pillars of prosperity or the architects of our financial nightmares? Prepare to have your trust shattered. Chapter 1. The Genesis of Greed and the Early Banking Sins. From the very inception of banking, a shadow has lurked beneath the veneer of respectability. The promise of security and prosperity was intertwined with the temptation of power and greed. The story of banks is not just a history of finance, it's a chronicle of controversies, scandals, and conspiracies that have shaped our world, often in ways we barely comprehend. Even the foundational myths of modern banking are steeped in controversy. The Rothschild family, often whispered about in hushed tones, rose to prominence in the late 18th century, their influence spreading across Europe like a financial empire. Legends, some true, many embellished, paint them as puppet masters, secretly controlling nations through debt. And were they simply astute financiers in a tumultuous era? Or did they wield undue influence behind the scenes? The line blurs, and in that ambiguity, conspiracy theories are born and thrive. The whispers of secret deals and hidden agendas have haunted banking ever since. Across the Atlantic, the nascent United States grappled with its own banking demons. The First Bank of the United States, championed by Alexander Hamilton, ignited fierce debate. Critics, like Thomas Jefferson, saw it as a tool of the wealthy elite, a dangerous concentration of power that threatened the very ideals of the Republic. This wasn't just an economic policy disagreement, it was a fundamental clash over the nature of power and who should control it. The bank, though ultimately dismantled, foreshadowed a recurring theme in American history: the struggle between centralized financial power and populist distrust. The Second Bank of the United States met a similar fate, destroyed by Andrew Jackson in a populist revolt against what he called a monster bank. The ensuing era of free banking was anything but free from chaos. Panics and crashes became commonplace, fueled by unregulated banks and speculative bubbles. The Panic of 1907, a near-total collapse of the financial system, laid bare the fragility of an unchecked banking world. From these early tremors of financial instability, the stage was set for even greater upheavals. The seeds of distrust, conspiracy, and scandal were sown in the very foundations of modern banking, and they would sprout into a dark and tangled forest in the century to come. Chapter 2. 20th Century Nightmares, Depression, Scandals, and S&Ls. The 20th century dawned with promises of unprecedented prosperity, but the banking industry's dark side was about to unleash its full fury. The Roaring Twenties, a decade of unchecked speculation and financial exuberance, masked a dangerous fragility. And then the crash. Black Tuesday, 1929. The stock market imploded, triggering the Great Depression, a decade of economic devastation that scarred a generation. Banks, heavily invested in the speculative frenzy, crumbled like dominoes. Bank runs became commonplace, as ordinary citizens desperately tried to withdraw their savings, only to find the vaults empty. Millions lost everything: their savings, their homes, their livelihoods. The banking system, once seen as a pillar of stability, was exposed as a house of cards, built on speculation and greed. The Depression fueled anger and resentment towards the financial elite, laying fertile ground for populist movements and conspiracy theories. In the wake of the catastrophe, reforms were enacted. The Glass-Steagall Act aimed to separate commercial banks from riskier investment banking activities, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, was created to protect depositors' savings. These measures brought a period of relative stability, but the underlying tensions remained. By the 1980s, deregulation fever swept through the financial world. Savings and loan associations, once staid institutions focused on home mortgages, were unleashed into a world of risky investments. Greed and mismanagement ran rampant. The savings and loan crisis erupted, costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars in bailouts. Charles Keating, a central figure in the S&L debacle, became a symbol of the era's excesses. The crisis exposed the dark side of deregulation, the dangers of unchecked greed, and the willingness of some to gamble with other people's money for personal gain. Just as the S&L dust settled, another banking scandal of global proportions emerged: BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. This shadowy institution, operating across borders with minimal oversight, engaged in massive fraud, money laundering, and even finance terrorist activities. The BCCI scandal revealed the dark underbelly of globalization, the ease with which illicit funds could flow through the interconnected financial system. Chapter 3: Shadow Deals and the Art of Obfuscation. The world of shadow deals thrives on complexity, on deliberately constructed mazes of finance designed to obscure and confuse. It's a world where transparency is the enemy, and obfuscation is an art form. Consider the rise of derivatives. These financial instruments, initially intended for hedging risk, have become incredibly complex, often incomprehensible even to financial professionals. They are contracts based on other assets, their value derived from something else: mortgages, bonds, currencies, even the weather. This layering of abstraction creates opacity, making it difficult to assess the true risk and value within the system. The 2008 financial crisis was in many ways a crisis of derivatives. Mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations, complex derivatives built upon subprime mortgages, became toxic assets, spreading contagion throughout the global financial system. Few truly understood the intricate web of risk until it was too late. Shadow deals also flourish in the realm of shell corporations and offshore accounts. These legal structures, often perfectly legitimate in themselves, can be weaponized to conceal the true owners of assets and the flow of money. Shell corporations, companies existing only on paper, can be used to mask transactions, making it nearly impossible to trace the ultimate beneficiaries. SaaS offshore accounts located in jurisdictions with lax regulations and banking secrecy laws offer another layer of concealment. They can be used to evade taxes, launder illicit funds, and shield assets from creditors or law enforcement. The scale of offshore finance is staggering. Trillions of dollars hidden from view, operating in the shadows of the global economy. Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, these massive leaks of confidential documents expose just a fraction of the vast offshore world, revealing how the wealthy and powerful use these structures to minimize taxes and maximize secrecy. But these leaks are rare glimpses into a system designed for opacity. For every document that surfaces, countless more remain hidden, buried in the shadows. The consequences of shadow deals are far-reaching. They erode trust in the financial system, fuel inequality, and undermine the rule of law. When wealth and power operate in the shadows, accountability vanishes, and the potential for abuse skyrockets. The art of obfuscation, perfected by the architects of shadow deals, allows the powerful to operate with impunity, while the rest of us are left to navigate a financial system increasingly rigged against us. Chapter 4: The 21st Century, Crisis and Contagion. The dawn of the 21st century brought new forms of financial excess and new kinds of crises. The dot-com bubble burst, wiping out trillions of dollars in speculative investments. Enron, a seemingly invincible energy giant, collapsed in a massive accounting fraud, exposing the dark side of corporate greed and deregulation. But these were mere tremors compared to the earthquake that was about to strike. The housing bubble, fueled by reckless lending, and the proliferation of toxic mortgage-backed securities, inflated to unsustainable levels. Banks, hungry for profits, pushed subprime mortgages on borrowers who couldn't afford them, packaging these risky loans into complex derivatives that spread like a virus through the financial system. In 2008, the dam broke. Lehman Brothers, a Wall Street icon, collapsed, triggering a global financial meltdown. Banks froze, credit markets seized up, and the world economy teetered on the brink of collapse. Governments around the world scrambled to inject trillions of dollars into the financial system to prevent total catastrophe. The 2008 crisis exposed the systemic risks built into the modern financial system, the interconnectedness of institutions, and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and deregulation. Millions lost their homes, their jobs, their savings, once again paying the price for the reckless behavior of a few at the top. The bailouts, while averting total collapse, fueled public anger and resentment. Too big to fail became a rallying cry for critics who argued that banks were being rewarded for their recklessness, while ordinary citizens were left to bear the burden. The crisis shattered trust in the financial system and sowed the seeds of further discontent. Chapter 5: Scandal After Scandal, LIBOR, Foreclosures and Beyond. The 2008 crisis was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a deeper malaise within the banking industry. The years that followed were marked by a seemingly endless stream of scandals, each revealing new depths of misconduct and ethical decay. The LIBOR scandal exposed the manipulation of a key benchmark interest rate that underpinned trillions of dollars in financial contracts worldwide. Banks were caught colluding to rig LIBOR for their own profit, distorting markets and defrauding countless borrowers and investors. The scandal, revealed a culture of impunity and a blatant disregard for ethical standards within some of the world's largest financial institutions. In the wake of the housing crisis, millions faced foreclosure, but the foreclosure process itself became another scandal. Banks were accused of robo-signing foreclosure documents, processing them without proper review, and even foreclosing on homes illegally. Families were thrown out of their homes based on fraudulent paperwork, victims of a system that prioritized speed and profit, over due process and fairness. Wells Fargo, a seemingly reputable bank, was rocked by scandal when it was revealed that employees had opened millions of fake accounts to meet aggressive sales quotas. Customers were charged fees for accounts they didn't authorize, their credit scores damaged, all to inflate the bank's bottom line. The scandal exposed a toxic sales culture that incentivized unethical behavior and put profits above customer interests. Danske Bank money laundering scandal, centered in its Estonian branch, revealed the staggering scale of illicit funds flowing through the global banking system. Billions of euros of suspicious transactions linked to Russian oligarchs and criminal networks were laundered through the bank, highlighting the ongoing challenges of combating financial crime in an interconnected world. From money laundering to fraud to market manipulation, the list of banking scandals in the 21st century seems endless. Each scandal erodes public trust further, reinforcing the perception that for some in the financial industry, the pursuit of profit trumps all ethical considerations. Chapter 6. Conspiracy theories are the puppet masters of finance? In the digital age, banking conspiracy theories have found new life, spreading rapidly through online forums, social media, and alternative news channels. The internet, while a source of information, has also become an echo chamber for misinformation and unfounded claims. Rothschild conspiracy, the myth of a secret banking dynasty controlling the world, persists, amplified by online communities and fueled by historical ignorance and prejudice. These theories often recycle old anti-Semitic tropes, repackaged for a new generation, finding fertile ground in times of economic anxiety and social unrest. Federal Reserve conspiracy, the idea that the Fed is a private bank manipulating the US economy for its own profit, also thrives online. Critics point to the Fed's structure, its independence from direct political control, and its immense power over monetary policy as evidence of a shadowy cabal operating outside of democratic accountability. More recent conspiracy theories have emerged around digital currencies and decentralized finance. Some claim that governments and banks are secretly working to undermine or control cryptocurrencies, fearing their potential to disrupt the traditional financial system. These theories often portray Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a form of rebellion against the established order, a way to opt out of a rigged system. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent economic fallout further fueled conspiracy narratives. Some theories allege that the crisis was deliberately engineered by global elites to consolidate power and wealth, using the pandemic as a pretext for a great reset of the world economy, orchestrated by shadowy banking interests. It's crucial to emphasize that these are conspiracy theories. They lack credible evidence, often rely on misinformation, and can be harmful, particularly those rooted in anti-Semitism and other forms of prejudice. However, dismissing them outright is also a mistake. They are symptoms of a deeper malaise, a profound lack of trust in institutions, in government, and especially in the financial system. Whether or not these specific theories are accurate, the underlying distrust is real and understandable. The history of banking scandals, the shadow deals, the fees, the unclaimed fortunes, these are not figments of imagination. They are documented realities that erode public trust and create fertile ground for conspiracy narratives to take root. The challenge is to address the legitimate grievances and systemic issues that fuel these theories, while critically examining and debunking the misinformation and prejudice they often contain. Chapter 7. Death by 1,000 Fees: How Banks Nickel and Dime You to Oblivion. In the age of digital banking, the fee machine has become even more sophisticated, more insidious. Fees are often buried in digital interfaces, hidden behind layers of menus and confusing jargon. They are deducted automatically, silently, often before we even realize they exist. The overdraft fee, the king of the hidden fees, has become a particularly lucrative revenue stream for banks. Thanks to automated systems and split-second transactions, overdrafts can be triggered with lightning speed, often for trivial amounts. A debit card transaction that pushes your balance just a few dollars below zero can instantly trigger a fee of $30 or more. And these fees are often assessed multiple times for the same overdraft. Extended overdraft fees can kick in if the negative balance persists for more than a few days, compounding the financial pain. It's a system designed to punish the vulnerable, to extract maximum profit from those already struggling to make ends meet. And ATM fees are another persistent irritant. While some banks offer free ATM access within their own network, using an out-of-network ATM can trigger fees from both your bank and the ATM operator. In some areas, particularly low-income communities, access to in-network ATMs is limited, forcing people to pay fees just to access their own cash. Monthly maintenance fees, once rare, have become increasingly common. Particularly for low-balance accounts, these fees, often justified as covering the cost of providing basic banking services, can eat away at small savings, discouraging people from even trying to save. It's a perverse system that penalizes those with the least, making it harder for them to build financial security. And then there are the hidden fees, the charges buried deep within the fine print, the fees for services you didn't even know existed or didn't explicitly request. Wire transfer fees, account closure fees, paper statement fees, inactivity fees. A bewildering array of charges designed to maximize bank revenue, often at the expense of customer trust and financial well-being. Death by 1,000 fees is not a dramatic scandal, not a billion-dollar fraud, but it's a constant grinding pressure, a daily reminder of the power imbalance in the banking relationship. It's a system that profits from our financial vulnerability, that extracts wealth through 1,000 tiny cuts, leaving many feeling nickel and dime to oblivion. If you've made it this far, first of all, thanks. And second, please leave a 100 in the comments. Also, if you like this video, please hit the like button, and if this is the sort of video you want more of, please hit the subscribe button and the bell. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, which in turn allows us to create more content like this and better content as the channel grows. Chapter 8, The Graveyard of Dreams, Banks and Unclaimed Fortunes. While banks profit from unclaimed funds, the story of lost money is not entirely one of despair. In many jurisdictions, efforts are underway to reunite unclaimed assets with their rightful owners. Online databases, government initiatives, and investigative journalists are working to shine a light on these forgotten fortunes and help people reclaim what is rightfully theirs. The process of reclaiming unclaimed funds can be complex and bureaucratic, but it is not impossible. Websites like missingmoney.com and the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators, NAUPA, provide searchable databases of unclaimed assets, allowing individuals to check if they or their relatives are owed money. These databases contain billions of dollars in unclaimed funds, waiting to be reunited with their owners. The money comes from various sources: dormant bank accounts, uncashed checks, forgotten stocks and bonds, insurance payouts, and even contents of forgotten safe deposit boxes. For many, the discovery of unclaimed funds can be a life-changing surprise, a windfall from the past. For others, it can be a crucial lifeline, providing much-needed financial relief in times of hardship. And for some, it's about more than just the money. It's about reclaiming a piece of their family history, a connection to loved ones lost or forgotten. However, the system is far from perfect. Banks are not always proactive in notifying account holders about dormant accounts, and the process of claiming funds can be cumbersome and time-consuming. More transparency and proactive outreach from banks and government agencies are needed to ensure that unclaimed fortunes are returned to their rightful owners, rather than becoming a silent profit center for financial institutions. Imagine a loved one who has passed away, or got into an accident, gone to jail, and this loved one is the only one who knows about the account or accounts. What happens to these accounts? The banks aren't exactly looking into who these accounts belong to, or who, in case of a misfortune, should be contacted and turned over to. Graveyard of Dreams doesn't have to be a final resting place for lost fortunes. With greater awareness, proactive efforts, and a commitment to transparency, we can transform this landscape of forgotten wealth into a field of rediscovered opportunities, ensuring that unclaimed funds find their way back to the people they belong to, breathing life back into dormant accounts and reclaiming lost legacies. Chapter 9. Justice Served. When banks face the music. In the grand theatre of global finance, banks often seem untouchable, operating above the law, shielded by their immense power and influence. But occasionally, the carefully constructed facade cracks. Sometimes, David does manage to land a blow against Goliath. These are the rare, almost mythical cases where ordinary individuals or determined regulators have dared to challenge the titans of banking, and won. Consider the case of Countrywide Financial, a name synonymous with the reckless lending practices that fueled the 2008 financial crisis. Angelo Mozilo, the CEO, became the poster child for Wall Street excess. Countrywide's predatory lending schemes pushed countless families into foreclosure, enriching themselves while Main Street suffered, but the Department of Justice came knocking. In 2016, years after the devastation, justice of a sort was served. Countrywide and Bank of America, which had acquired it, were forced to pay a staggering $16.65 billion settlement for their fraudulent conduct. Billions back to the victims of their greed. A victory, yes, but a victory carved from the ruins of countless lives. Then there's Wells Fargo, the seemingly wholesome Stagecoach-era bank, revealed to be a pressure cooker of corporate fraud. Millions of fake accounts, opened without customer consent, driven by ruthless sales quotas. Customers' credit scores ruined, fees piled up, all to inflate the bank's profits and executive bonuses. The outrage was palpable. While no criminal charges were brought against top executives, Wells Fargo faced billions in fines and settlements. They were dragged through congressional hearings, their reputation tarnished, their carefully crafted image shattered. Another instance where the system, however imperfectly, seemed to push back. And what of HSBC? The global banking giant caught red-handed laundering billions for Mexican drug cartels and terrorist organizations, facilitating the flow of dirty money that fueled violence and instability across borders. The scale of their complicity was breathtaking. SBC too faced a massive settlement, $1.9 billion, a record at the time. But did this fine truly deter them? Did it dismantle the shadow networks they enabled? Or was it merely a cost of doing business, a slap on the wrist for a global behemoth? These cases, these settlements, they offer a glimmer of accountability, a sense that even the titans of finance can be brought to heel. But scratch beneath the surface of these victories, and a more unsettling truth emerges. Imagine if these colossal sums of laundered cartel money had flowed through a small independent business. Imagine if a local credit union had systematically defrauded its customers like Wells Fargo. The individuals responsible, from the tellers to the CEOs, would be facing decades behind bars. Handcuffs, prison jumpsuits, the full weight of the justice system crashing down upon them. But when the perpetrators are global banking behemoths, the rules change. Fines are levied. Massive, yes, but ultimately a cost of doing business, absorbed into their vast balance sheets. Executives may be shuffled aside, perhaps with a diminished bonus for a year or two, but rarely, if ever, do they face personal criminal charges. Why? Because these institutions are deemed too big to jail, too interconnected, too vital to the global economy to face genuine punitive justice. The smoky backrooms of power, the whispered deals between government and finance, the relentless lobbying. These are the shields that protect the architects of financial chaos from the consequences that would crush ordinary citizens. Justice for the powerful remains a carefully crafted illusion, while for the rest of us the scales are forever tipped. Chapter 10. Summary and reflection. Banking in the shadows of the grip titans. We've descended into the abyss of banking history, witnessing a relentless cycle of scandals, conspiracies, and systemic exploitation. From the clandestine deals of early financiers to the algorithmic manipulations of modern markets, the pursuit of unchecked power and profit has been the constant driving force. Ethical considerations, public trust, mere inconveniences to be swept aside. Promise of banking, the supposed engine of prosperity, has become a gilded cage for many. While banks amass unimaginable wealth fueled by hidden fees, shadow deals, and systemic risks they offload onto the public, ordinary lives are increasingly squeezed. Dreams are deferred, futures are mortgaged, and the gap between the financial elite and the rest of us widens into a chasm. Reform, accountability. These are comforting illusions, whispered promises, in a system designed to resist true change. The banking industry is not merely a collection of institutions. It is a deeply entrenched power structure, woven into the fabric of our societies, our governments, our very lives. They are not simply part of the system, they are the system. Fintech, decentralized finance, are these genuine disruptors or simply new playgrounds for the same old games? Grassroots movements demanding change, are they voices of hope or futile cries in the wilderness? The forces arrayed against genuine reform are immense. Their tendrils reaching into every corner of power. The future of banking, it seems, is not a choice but a trajectory. A path further into the shadows, where control is centralized, transparency is a myth, and the line between legal and criminal blurs into nothingness. The scales of justice remain tipped, weighted down by the gold of the financial elite. And the grip of the banks, unseen, unspoken, tightens around us all. Chapter 11. Further reading and resources. Navigating the labyrinth. Knowledge as a weapon. In a world dominated by shadows and obscured truths, knowledge is not just power, it is a weapon. Understanding the dark side of banking is not an end in itself, but the first step in navigating the labyrinth, in resisting the forces that seek to control our financial lives. To penetrate the fog of financial deception, dive deeper into the forbidden knowledge. Question the official narratives, seek out voices that challenge the status quo. For a truly critical examination of central banking and its historical controversies, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin remains essential reading, a red pill for the financially naive. To understand the anatomy of financial collapse and the systemic corruption it reveals, revisit All the Devils Are Here by Bethany McLean and Joe Nocera, a chilling post-mortem of 2008. To dissect the architecture of shadow finance and the mechanisms of deregulation, Fool's Gold by Gillian Tett offers a sobering analysis. For a radical reimagining of debt and the very foundations of our economic system, Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber provides a perspective that will challenge everything you thought you knew. Organizations like the Public Banking Institute and Positive Money are not just sources of information, they are potential points of resistance, advocating for systemic change, for alternatives to the dominant paradigm. Websites like missingmoney.com and NAUPA, while seemingly benign, can be tools to reclaim what is rightfully yours, to claw back a small piece from the unclaimed fortunes that banks quietly accumulate. Financial literacy, in this context, is not about playing the game better. It's about understanding how the game is rigged. Resources like Investopedia and Khan Academy can be repurposed, used not just to navigate the existing system, but to dissect it, to understand its vulnerabilities, its inherent biases. Arm yourself with knowledge not to become a better cog in the machine, but to understand the machine itself. The dark side of banking is not an immutable force of nature. It is a human construct, built on layers of decisions, of greed, of complicity. By becoming informed, by sharing knowledge, by demanding accountability, not just from banks, but from the systems that enable them, we can begin to push back against the encroaching shadows. The fight for a just financial system is not a hopeful aspiration. It is a necessary battle. And knowledge, in this fight, is our most potent weapon.